Welcome everyone. And it's a bold new world out there, and we can either be defeated or harness the energy to make ourselves and our businesses stronger. And as business owners, this is our time to kind of direct this energy to kind of focus, create, discover, and transition our businesses. I'm Alan Wallner. I'm the president and visionary of Conscious Branding. And I wanted to welcome you here today to Thrivecast. And Thrivecast is a series of panel discussions focused on you, on your business and your success. And with each episode, we'll focus on a topic, and we bring in some panelists. And we want to host this in this fashion so we can spark new thoughts and generate new ideas that may not be the normal for you, or maybe even to push the boundaries of what we know is familiar, and even frame up a new mindset to ignite our businesses forward. So I'm glad you're here today because our topic is create your new normal. Very appropriate for what's going on out there today. And trying to do business the old way just won't cut it anymore. And all things being said out there, it doesn't look like we're going to be going back to the old normal. So we're entering uncharted territory on many levels, and we can't possibly know everything that we need to know. And so that's why we're going to take a look at kind of what makes this business climate and mindset different and how it's likely to evolve. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. We have Rosemary Davies-Janes. She's a business growth expert with MIBOSO. And Rosemary is a master brand architect who works with business owners to uncover, own, and express their authentic voices, strengths, and values so they can stand out in the crowd for all the right reasons and grow their business successfully. So welcome. Glad you're here today, Rosemary.
Thank you.
And we have Ben Theis here. He is the owner of Skol Marketing. And Ben works with small businesses and nonprofits to get found online. And Ben has worked with Google and leverages his expertise to help companies be seen through search engine optimization, often known as SEO, social media, and search engine marketing, which is known as SEM, and other analytics, magic, and voodoo. So Ben, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And we have Bill Mills. He's the CEO of Executive Group. And Executive Group is a peer group organization designed to help business owners, managers, and leaders build great companies and enduring success. Bill's worked with organizations to do strategic planning, leadership development, executive coaching, and culture initiatives. So welcome, Bill.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
And to all of our guests, thank you for being here today. I'm really excited to kind of get going on this topic because throughout history, when events occur, such as war, environmental disasters, or even 9/11, within a certain period of time, the mindset of people seems to morph back to the state of out of sight, out of mind. They tend to go back to that comfortable state of activity. The current climate of the pandemic and social unrest is very different than these past episodes or events that have occurred. This is global, and it impacts everyone, mentally, socially, economically, and personally. And it's going to be here for an unknown period of time. So we have a completely different wrapper around this one. And so to kind of kick this create your new normal discussion here today, I'm going to ask our panelists if they can metaphorically peel back the layers of the onion on the business climate and share what their key indicators are that they kind of use to keep an eye on and to know how to navigate their business and all the decisions they have to make. And so with that, I think I was going to kind of kick things off with Rosemary and see if we could have you kind of enlighten us a little bit on your approach to that.
Absolutely. And I must say, Alan, I much prefer metaphorical onion peeling to real onion peeling because there's a few less tears involved. Now, I guess I look at a number of things, and this is actually a challenging question because there are so many yes buts. It depends what type of business you're in. It depends who your ideal customer is. Are you selling essential services? Are you selling non-essential services? Do you have a high price point item? Do you have more of a commodity that you're putting out there as either a product or service. So all that being said, what I tend to look for are non-essential, well, product businesses. I look at businesses that are selling non-essential products and services that are thriving right now. That's a great indicator to pay attention to. I look at, you know, in what ways they're thriving, how they're marketing, what their customers are saying, you know, just really examine what's going on. And if they are forthcoming, look to see what practices that they have changed or how the business has morphed or pivoted to meet these current situations. I also zoom in. I've noticed this personally. There are a few businesses that are actively distancing themselves from customers, pushing them back, refusing to answer the phone, telling people to leave voicemails only. And those businesses make me very curious. What's going on that they are so busy and they actually have the luxury of pushing people away? It almost seems that they've forgotten that the one standard in business is that change is consistent, change is constant. You may be able to push customers away right now, but let's hope that the pandemic runs its course, and by September, it's back to more of the situation that we are used to, where businesses are actively seeking out customers. The customers that you've made yourself unavailable to have long memories. They're not going to forget that they were pushed away. So, you know, and again, this is something that always comes up when I talk about business models and business mindsets is, you know, having your eye on the big picture as opposed to the small picture, the right now. So I made a few notes here. Yes, really just the best answer is looking at whatever business is relevant to my customers. I will look at emerging market trends, innovations that are being rolled out and tested, and how people respond to those. Like it's a little challenging because there are so many places you can watch and the information available is kind of overwhelming. But I think, you know, just trying to stay in your lane and look at what's going on in your vertical with businesses who would be your competitors is probably the best place to start.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe some businesses that you're kind of aspiring to be like. And kind of learn from them.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, how about you? What's your perspective on this?
Very similar to Rosemary. I look at my clients. I work with about 50 different businesses. Some of them have gotten just devastated by COVID. They were in hotels. They were in body shops. You know, nobody's getting in car accidents anymore. Body shop, our car crashes are down 80%. So the little bit of money that your insurance company is giving you back, don't worry, they'll be fine. But most of my clients are down a little, but they think they've found the bottom, and that's, to me, is a hopeful sign that they might be at 2018 levels of volume, or they might even be approaching close to where they were at the end of the year. And they seem to be, I'd say 80–90% are feeling like, okay, we can handle this. If there's no other big changes, we can be profitable at this new size of revenue. So I'm optimistic about that. I also have been following some of the Fortune magazine surveys. If you search out the Fortune magazine's what is it? Their Fortune 500 CEO survey. That's really interesting. Watching these really big companies make their bets on what they're going to invest in and what they're going to stay away from. What percent of them think that airlines will come back? What percent of them think airlines will never come back? And then kind of the second order and third order consequences of some of these industries shifting. And so I think they probably have a pretty good view at the macro economy, the big E economy, and most of my clients are in the small economy. They can kind of make their own. I mean, by being indispensable to their customers, they can survive even when the big guys can't. But it's nice to know that. The other one I follow is ITR Economics. If you search for these guys, ITR Economics, they are surprisingly accurate in tracking what's happening in the economy and where it's going to go. And usually they're within about 6 months of being right. And many of my clients have been tracking them for years. So I think you can follow them for as little as, maybe $150 a year, and then you can certainly spend a lot more. But those people seem to be really good at seeing what storm fronts are coming. Nobody saw the pandemic, and nobody saw the government response, and nobody saw some of this other stuff. But
yeah, this is
but in the
probably some
midst
of
of
it. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, but that's okay. But in the midst of all of it, sometimes you just have to look out the window, like Rosemary said, and just see what you see and what trends are accelerating and what constraints are dissolving. And forces that were preventing certain business models from succeeding have just disappeared. And as a result, you're seeing, money and profit rush into these industries that now have all of their constraints removed. So that's what I'd look for.
Yeah, no, that's very good. That's very helpful. It gives us some tangible resources that we can go take a look at. Ben, are there some, you come from a different perspective here and you really know a lot of analytics and things of that nature. So what would you add to this?
Yeah, so obviously great points by Rosemary and Bill. One thing that I would add that I think has, again, kind of propelled us, and we've actually done some webinars on it and we've done some blogs and some white papers on, is, again, not only doing some of the things that Rosemary and Bill are kind of talking about, but even more specifically, looking at your demographics kind of behavior style and where they kind of are, again, kind of sitting, understanding that, we are dealing with something that's unprecedented. So we have to be kind of maneuverable, but also understand that people may be in different areas to make certain decisions. And so when I say that, what we're kind of, we kind of look at is where are, those demographics that we're going after, as in clients and potential clients, and looking at, again, where are they right now? And even if they're in a no buy mode right now, it doesn't mean that we can't add value to them or add value to our relationship with them. So, again, what we've really kind of looked at is definitely the things that Rosemary and Bill are saying, but also trying to analyze, again, kind of where our demographics are at, and also realizing that everyone on this webinar and everyone that's going to be watching it most likely has different areas of the country, meaning that obviously, here July 21st, if we have a client that's based in Minnesota, that might be different than someone that's based in Houston. And so kind of understanding, again, kind of the behavior, kind of psychology behind it and where they're going to be with kind of decision-making, I think is really critical to really be successful during this kind of period of time, and knowing that it's going to be super flexible and it's going to change. We could be getting different stats. Hypothetically, we could be right where Houston is hypothetically by next month, and they could be right where we are. We just don't know some of this, but I think it's having a plan and understanding that, and then kind of looking at that with your, again, with your business and marketing plan.
No, that's good. It's all very helpful. It's not going through the traditional channels of news, CNN and other things like that. It's going out and looking. It's kind of like boots on the ground, going out and taking a look at what's really happening out there, talking to people, reaching out to other connections you may have on LinkedIn in other states, and see how business is there, and forging new relationships.
No, 100%, like, honestly, it's trying to also have, even reaching out more than we were to people in our industry, again, friendly competitors, even just other clients, and really kind of honestly just having some of those conversations with them, even if it's one-on-one, if it's via Zoom, whatever it may be, but really honestly kind of taking more of a granular approach and a one-on-one approach to really kind of start to ask them and just kind of feel it out a little bit with the different connections and relationships you may have.
Yeah, all very good, insightful information, you guys. I appreciate that. And so we've got some really good resources that people can go take a look at, some action items. So now I'm gonna kind of flip this a little bit. So another way to kind of look at what is going on is kind of from the perspective of what a larger company might be doing when they're kind of hurting and really struggling. They'll bring in a turnaround specialist, someone to kind of pull their business out of the slump. So from that business turnaround perspective, what top things would you take a look at before you determine what to do next with your business? You sort of hit on some of that with what you're going here, but now you're aligning that more with your business and what's happening with your business aligned with what's happening out there in the climate. So with that, I'll start with, again, so many people to choose from here. So we'll go ahead with Bill.
Great. No, the turnaround guys that I've gotten to know, it's funny. Their phone probably rings off the hook nowadays, but they think every business needs to be turned around. They think that 5% of your customer base is migrating away from you, and you just don't know it. And so they're always in a turnaround mindset, and it's pretty much an 80-20 analysis. If you really get dispassionate and take all the emotion out of your business and step back and say, okay, probably 80% of my revenues, 80% of my profit comes from a very small percentage of my customers. That's the market telling you that you're relevant to them. And I'd want to know more about why am I relevant and how do I get more of those folks. That would be probably one of the first things I would look at. If any of you have studied Michael Porter, the Harvard strategy guru, he talks about 5 competitive forces. And basically the idea is profit is moving around in the marketplace, and an efficient market over time squeezes profit out. That's why everyone is always talking about the good old days, back when you could make $1. But what happens is that market power shifts. So customers get stronger and then they can demand lower prices, or suppliers get stronger, they can demand higher costs. Your competitors get scared and they just start dropping their prices and eroding profit. New entrants coming into the marketplace or substitutes. And so I would look at taking Rosemary's first advice of watch the trends that are accelerating, and then I would apply it to those 5 areas and try to figure out who's going to get stronger because of this. Are my customers going to get stronger? Are new entrants? Substitutes? I mean, whoever would have thought that Zoom would take out all the airlines over the course of a weekend? You know, that's a new entrant to meetings. It used to be you get on a plane and go have a meeting and see a customer. Well, that's gone. So I'd look at those types of things. And I'll let somebody else speak here, but before I give up the podium, I'd say I would really look at my assets, you know, my intellectual property, meaning what do I know how to do really, really well? I've taken that intellectual property and I've applied it to make a specific product or service, but I could probably deploy that intellectual property in different ways. And we often forget that some of our intellectual property is we know which of our customers are smart and which of them are stupid and make really dumb mistakes. And knowing about what makes our customers smart or dumb gives us something else to sell. I mean, if I knew what those brilliant customers were doing, maybe my dumb ones would pay for that information. So smart and dumb, sorry for all the politically incorrect language here, but I'm saying that we have access to information that we've never really paid attention to, and that is an asset going forward.
Okay, that sounds good. You know, sometimes there aren't better ways to explain a particular type of demographic group. So with that, Rosemary, how would you like to add what Bill was saying?
Well, actually, I just a little humor here, because it's not always a good time for humor. I think someone at Zoom anticipated taking out the airlines, otherwise it would have a different name. Anyhow, again, there's so many different factors. You know, there's differences if you're selling B2B, if your customers are businesses, if your customers are consumers. But something that Bill said, objectivity is the thing. And I was fortunate enough to be called in to work with probably small to mid-sized business when they were going through a merger. It was sort of a condition that they get their marketing straightened out. And it was an interesting perspective because especially given that I've been independent for 20 years, I got to work with the president and the senior VP, and there was a lot that was going on that was ego-driven. It actually was not serving the company. It was them getting to be right. It was them getting to hold their fiefdoms. So I think, my first thing was, because they were a B2B company, and I talked to all of their frontline sales managers right across the country. It's like, okay, why do customers buy? What is the company doing right? What's the company doing wrong? Where is there room for improvement? And they, first of all, were so delighted that someone was actually coming to them and asking for input. And of course, there's all kinds of biases in what they said, but when I looked at the the common denominators across the board, the product was being purchased because of price point, and the marketing message was quality. And all the customers were looking at this marketing message about quality and going, not very good quality, but I can afford it. That's why I'm going to buy this. So, we have biases. Another thing I look at in organizations is their processes. And, the longer the organization's been established, the more of these kind of stack up. And typically inside a corporation, the processes have been created to make it easier to run the company, not to make the customer's life easier. So there are an awful lot of this is how we do it types of approaches that really do need to be swept aside, changed, because these days a company that is customer friendly, customer centric, as my British colleagues like to say, is a company that's going to make an impact during this time, during any time, and be remembered as a place where it's comfortable to do business, and it may even extend with the halo effect to, this is a company I can trust, this is a company I can count on because they are so interested in how they can serve my needs. And I think that was just, another thing, what are customers complaining about? Now, if you're a consumer targeted company, looking at what customers are saying to your CSRs, the frontline people there, it's like, what are they complaining about? What are they happy about? What are they telling them that they need that may or may not be available? So it all goes back to, front lines. The frontline workers know so much, no matter what type of business you're in, and they are a resource that can be tapped. And yes, it's different these days because a lot of them are working from home. You may have to congregate on Zoom just as we are doing now, but just really have everybody watching out for things that are shifting.
Yeah, so kind of like what we were saying before, and it's hard to understand why these companies are becoming more reclusive when they should actually be out there building dialogues and relationships with their customers to really
it's
get
what
the
they're
edge on
used to.
things.
If I could just say, it's what they're used to. It's spreadsheet management. It's let's get in the boardroom. Let's do a SWOT analysis. Like it's become very foreign to a lot of organizations to actually go to the front lines and get customer intel. It's far better to hire someone that'll come in and run a PowerPoint, and everyone takes notes and everyone comes up with a plan, a strategy, and key points that they have to hit. And that is not the new normal. When we're out in the middle of the ocean without any navigation tools, we got to deal with what we've got at hand.
Yeah. All right, Ben, you're up. Let's.
Yeah. So, Megan, going along with what you were talking about, Alan, of, the question of, when companies bring in a turnaround specialist and, how do we turn this around? One thing I do like to kind of mention to people is that, yes, we are going through unprecedented times, but I think it's also important that sometimes the best advice is the simplest advice, and don't overreact. Yes, you have to be smart in the marketplace and you're going to have to conform. But I have talked to, again, colleagues, I've talked to clients that are doing knee-jerk reactions because they're letting emotions and, this, and again, rightfully so, that we feel afraid, we feel, nervous, we feel unprecedented because we're going through this. But I think it's really important to realize that you have to stay, again, strong, and you have to look, not only just for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, we have to look for the next, again, year, 6 years when trying to make some of these decisions. So, I think everyone out there, even if, the industry as, came to a halt, there are opportunities out there for everybody. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I have a silver bullet answer for every single industry out there on how to turn it around. But I will say that if you listen to your clients, customers, demographics, if you listen to the trends, if you listen to your colleagues, there are going to be opportunities to help you either get through this or to conform and persevere. I have clients on both ends, some that have done knee-jerk reactions and we're going to go into cocoon mode. And honestly, they're probably going to be feeling that once, the other side of clients are actually trying to conform and doing different types of things to not only get themselves through this, but to actually even better themselves or to even create more relationships. And I'd like to take just a chance here is, I know in the chat, there's been a couple questions kind of coming along here that I was just trying to kind of keep up with. And some of them are, for instance, specifically around like the event industry. How do we, again, the event industry, I think we all can agree, maybe besides airlines, we're probably, the most devastated there was. And so I think that it's important to realize that some things that you can be doing is, focusing on future relationships, meaning that, maybe it's an instance of trying to create something where I'm just kind of spitballing here, but maybe it's, if you're an event planner, maybe we put something together that is how to throw the most, badass party at home. How to, again, Burger King actually was kind of cool, came up with this infographic of how to make your own Whopper at home. I'm saying if you think more like that on how can we still, keep a relationship with someone, potentially create a relationship with someone, but at least cultivate that relationship through this, even if there's no chance to sell somebody on something, there's still a value there to create that or cultivate that relationship. And I think that if we, we're going to a little bit more critical thinking, we can kind of get some of those and then apply that to our business strategy.
Yeah, I like that. It's taking what you already know and just adding a little spin to it, a different perspective that aligns with what someone needs. And you can definitely open doors. You don't have to kind of do a massive shift with your business. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, all very good information. So here we go. This is the big question. I think we've kind of answered a little bit, but I might go into it in a different perspective here. So what is normal anyway, right? So I guess basically, how should businesses be seeing this? Is it getting back to some sense of normal, or is it going out there and seeing this as an opportunity to create something completely new and to create a brand new future for themselves? So I know, Ben, you just got finished talking, but I'm going to start out with you on that question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. So I think, I think a lot of people maybe are, have overheard the word the new normal because no one really even knows what that means in a sense of what that's going to be. But I think one thing that we all can agree on and that we should all be looking at is that no matter what comes out of this, again, things are not going to be exactly how they were in 2019. Things are going to change. And again, and they may change period, or they may change for the long term. So, kind of like what we were just talking here, and I think, Bill was joking about the, Zoom taking down the airlines. I think, again, if you're in sales, obviously things have started to kind of change in that how we potentially kind of communicate with potential clients and even just the expectations or the etiquette. If we were to go back 2 years, yes, there was video conferencing, but I can guarantee you most of us sales people on here, again, either it would look bad to the client or potentially not feel very comfortable to us if we just started out saying, hey, let's have a Zoom call. We all know that one-on-one kind of touch is, again, usually more preferable. So what I would say is that, kind of feeling out and seeing the trends and seeing how not only can we change for the betterment of our company, maybe it's listening more and maybe there are some opportunities there. Again, I'll give you one internally with us is, I had always done some webinars, but again, we do a ton of workshops around the community. And a lot of them are in person and people like those. And I always loved being in front of people and kind of doing that. What I've actually found through this though, is we can actually help more people and more people can actually, again, be involved because we've actually experimented with this. I've listened to those, again, potential customers, even just, again, everyday users. And now we're looking to actually kind of change how we're doing things for the future. So our new normal for that particular piece of our business is going to be different. And I guarantee you that if you're listening to your clients, if you're listening to your colleagues, you're listening to trends, you'll be able to kind of see that. And that's really where I think the new normal is just transforming what you're kind of doing, but transforming it to the demographics and marketplace.
Oh, yeah, that's good, because, you know, one thing that is always constant is change, and everything's always going in cycles. And just like in the 1600s, they had no idea that there would be airplanes flying around in the sky. So things are, and they didn't go back to their new normal, or they didn't go back to a normal. It's always progressing, always changing. So how about you, Rosemary?
Well, that was actually exactly what I was going to say. You know, the one constant is change. And I think, you know, I will, full disclosure, I am that interesting personality type that is an idealist / rational. So my idealist side sees this as a brave new world. It's an opportunity to get past the business as usual type of mindset that makes business kind of boring. I know way back when I was running the marketing department for Toys R Us Canada, back in the good days, when they were growing and opening stores right across the country from coast to coast, we were looking at the competition, we were surveying people, we were finding out what customers wanted that they weren't getting from existing outlets, toy outlets, game outlets, that type of thing. But then there came this point in time, and surprisingly, Canada is the only country where Toys R Us survived, but they didn't care about the competition anymore. I was part of the group that established their everyday low price policy, which basically is a get out of jail free card for not paying attention to market pricing. You know, you just do what you do, and, you know, if someone else beats you, you match it, but otherwise, you know, you don't try to win on price. They got to a point where they were very much resting on their laurels, you know, doing business their way, not wanting to adapt to change, and what happened to them is a lesson for us all. So I think there is a great opportunity right now to do the right thing. There's an opportunity to ride the wave, to be open to constant evolution, to build, as it's been said before, a really strong relationship with customers, because we have all of these tools. It's been easier than ever to get to know your customers. You know, we've got all of these amazing CRM tools, you know, and it just doing the right thing, taking care of our customers. The more we do that, the more we build trust. And I think that's really important in this environment, because what's going on around the world is telling people that they can't trust. They have to, you know, in the best case scenario, trust and verify. They've got to substantiate. Came up the other day, Ancestry.com is using sort of algorithms to present what looks like genealogical family facts. You know, they're actually educated guesses, but they're presenting them as facts. And, you know, to Bill's point with smart and not so smart customers, you know, it's misleading, and people are getting used to not taking things at face value. So I think the closer you get to your customers, the more trust you build, the more you support a consistent brand experience, the better off you're going to be for whatever change comes down the road.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. Trust, you know, it's so difficult to build, but so easy to break.
Oh, so, very easy, yes.
Yeah. So, Bill, how about your perspective on this?
I think the new normal is going to be an enduring case of irritable bowel syndrome. I'm pretty sure everybody's just going to have heightened anxiety for the next couple of years. I do think this, you know, this idea of hunkering down, I don't think, like Ben says, this is not the time to hunker down. This is the time to remember why you got into business in the first place, to be an entrepreneur, to solve a problem that nobody else could solve, to make something great. And none of that has changed. It's just that we got T-boned at the intersection. We just never saw it coming. However, pretty much everyone agrees there was no fundamental underlying weakness in the economy when all this hit. And so I don't think it's going to be a fast V curve and we're back up. It could take longer than that, but I do sense that many companies can just sort of hang on and ramp up their customer experience and keep doing what they do, and they can probably be fine. I don't think those are the ones that are going to take over the next generation of business. I think the ones that say that the deck is being reshuffled, and I got to figure out how to be the dealer when this game starts. And so take control of the deck, take control of your assets, figure out the best way to deploy them, and invest in the marketing and the research and everything you need to do to position yourselves to come out of this faster and stronger. For some companies, this will be a bifurcation point where they leave the old behind. And I think those could very well be the big winners. There's risk associated with that, and also there's risk associated with not doing anything. But as we know, it's just risky to be alive. So I don't. Overall, I'm optimistic that many companies will survive without having to change. Actually, I think.
I liked your analogy of taking control of the deck. So, all right. So I gave you guys kind of a list of questions of some things I was going to be asking you prior to the webinar here, but I'm going to throw one in here that I didn't have on there. Just kind of stir it up a little bit. So it's times like this. Some say you should work on yourself first. Go inward, do the work, and clear up any energy blocks, limiting beliefs, and resistance that you may have towards success and even money. So what are your thoughts around this perspective? It's a little bit different, a little bit non-traditional with people thinking about business, but it's also looking at yourself as a business owner and basically kind of becoming that conscious leader. So how do you see this adding value? And with that, I'll start out with Ben.
Yeah, so no, that's a fantastic question. I think, again, one of the aspects to kind of look at is that, anytime there's, again, a time of peril, a time of, angst or a challenge, you always want to kind of do some self-reflecting. I think also it's a matter of, and we've talked to some clients about this too, is, again, it's finding value in potentially, again, in a different way, meaning that, like, what I was saying, like with Burger King, with doing, Now Things webinars and not events, kind of changing, again, how you can continue a relationship with someone. I think where I'm kind of going with that, though, is that in the context of kind of seeing where you can not only change it with your, again, your business and your, customers and clientele, but then also looking at how that's going to change internally with yourself. Again, we've changed communications internally. We've taken the opportunity to kind of, again, figure out what makes it better. If unfortunately you are maybe slower with sales or slower things there are more valuable things that you can do that while we're getting by through, again, unprecedented times and not knowing when it's going to go back to normal. But as Bill kind of talked about that, there is a lot of optimism that we can kind of get by and kind of just, struggle, fight through this, really be, critical think through this, but really going through there, if there's any gaps in either time or resources that you're not utilizing, absolutely, you should always be looking to do those to yourself. But I would even throw that out there, even during good times, it's obviously still good, because then, to be honest with you, going off what Rosemary said earlier, we don't get into a Toys R Us situation. Because if we're never critically looking at ourselves, if we're never, again, taking the chance to work on ourselves, unfortunately, we can find ourselves in that situation thinking everything is great and just having blinders on.
How about you, Bill? What's your perspective on this?
Well, first I heard the question as what do I need to do on my own psyche? How do I need to get more grounded, more authentic, more real? I think real is better. And really be in business for all the right reasons. But then I started thinking, well, working on me could mean working on my business model. And even if I don't know where to go right now, you can't help but see little things shifting and changing. And so maybe one way is to carve out some amount of time that's on your calendar to maybe pull a few people together that are good, kind of a mastermind group, and they could be from inside your company and outside and your clients, and just start the conversation on where do we need to innovate? And that could be a whole new business model, but it could also be, like other presenters have said, just improving our services. So at the end of the day, I think the value I create for someone else is how I reap a reward. And the more value I create for the more people, the more successful I am. And I think that works personally and professionally. And I think that works for your business model as well. So I would get into the value creation business. We may have gotten comfortable with our business model and our value proposition, and I would look for ways to enhance it, and really think from the customer into the company rather than what's my messaging to the customer. I'd start to spend some time on what do they want to feel when they work with me. Because it's not just what we do for them, but how they feel about it. And I think sometimes that part gets lost. So kind of rambling, sorry.
I kind of threw that question in. Oh. I like feedback's good, right? Keeps you honest. So Rosemary, I'd like to kind of hear your perspective on this in terms of going inward and kind of doing the work on yourself and clearing up energy blocks and limiting beliefs, and kind of how you think that can add some value.
I think that's a great last minute addition question. And sort of to Bill's point, I have already gathered together a group of people. They're, past clients, people I interviewed on my radio show way back when. And it's been really, really interesting because there are some consistent threads coming out. People are taking more time to reflect, to actually nourish themselves. I think this period of time, the COVID pause, has been in its way sort of a time when we can finally get around to doing all those things that we had put off. And, our last meeting last week, it was interesting that these things are happening pretty naturally, organically. And, people who'd always thought about taking up a Tai Chi practice are all of a sudden taking action, not from the old mindset, which is sort of control, make a list, check off, everything you get done. It's just they feel pulled to do it and they do it. And then in reflection time, they look back and say, wow, I've always wanted to do this. How did I get here when it was something that I had wanted to do for so long that never got started? So I think this is a period where we do get to reach out and have real conversations with other people, because even though the other group I'm in is looking at a topic similar to this, there's a lot of very personal sharing, personal habits that have changed, and it's refreshing. We get to remember that we're human beings as well as human doings, to go to that old one. And I think it's really necessary, because if we continue to push, we kind of lose ourselves in the process. And again, to what was previously said, we can't bring the best possible value to our customers if we are struggling ourselves to feel that we are being valued on a personal level. We've got to, we're coming, I think, to a much more balanced way of operating, even though it took a total shutdown to get back to a balanced point of view. But I really, really hope that this is something that we will hang on to as we move forward into whatever is next, because I see a lot of people really enjoying life a whole lot more despite lost business. Someone in my group, their revenues were cut in half from last year. Like, it's tough, but there are all these intangible rewards that people are really appreciating.
I would agree. World was kind of a rat race before, and now I think there's more people actually enjoying life and being very grateful for what they have. And that's just in of itself changing, I think, the climate out there. I think it's building new types of business relationships. It's, there's even some vulnerability in there, which makes you more human, which helps you attract more customers because they can relate to you, or you can relate to them. And I just think it starts creating a stronger bond between people, because it's a little more emotional. People say, emotions, you don't want to mix all that in there. But But I think emotions have a lot to do with buying and building the relationships. And I think that's what's coming out more now as a result of all this. Like Bill, I'm doing a little bit of rambling there, but anyway, now I think now we're going to take a little bit of time and we're going to take a look at some questions that people are putting out there. And I know Ben kind of grabbed one along the way there earlier and was able to kind of address it slightly, and it took some time to take a look at that. But here's one that we have from one of our attendees here, with no known timeline for the pandemic to end. And Bill, you had alluded to this too, where it just is going to go on for an extended period of time. So will my sort of new normal need to be redefined on a consistent basis? Or is it something that I can kind of set and maybe use it as a I guess as kind of a benchmark or more of a concrete point of reference? So that's kind of the question. I sort of ad-libbed a little bit on it. So, but I think we'll start with Rosemary on that one.
I really want to talk about that. Just very briefly, I think what we are experiencing now with the instability and the evolving change, I think that may very well be our new normal. And I think it's actually very good for us to live in that state, because when people get complacent and things get predictable, even though it's comfortable, it's not really good for us. So I think the expectation of having to continue to evolve and shift is what we're moving into.
Kind of that predictable is the unpredictable.
Exactly.
All right. So, Bill, would you care to add anything to that?
Maybe a couple ideas. I agree that uncertainty is a very uncomfortable place for the human psyche to live, and that we crave some kind of stability and certainty. And so, some of my clients are scheduling certainty with their employees. They're saying, we will be doing this plan for the next 90 days, and we're not going to change it for 90 days. Everybody can get adjusted to this, and then we'll revisit it. So they're putting sunsets on decisions, but for the next 90 days, we're going to do this, or 180 days. And I think that's bringing some sense of predictability, even in the midst of change. And as Rosemary was talking, I was thinking about how the rate of change is what really captured us, not so much change itself, but it happens so fast. And change is still relative. If you're standing in front of a bus that's going 60 miles an hour, that feels different than if you're driving a bus that's going 60 miles an hour. And I just keep thinking, where can we take some control of the direction and get people on board? I think action cures fear. And anytime that we can make a decision and coordinate action in a positive, effective direction, people are going to relax into and get caught up in the progress again. And so I'm a big believer that inaction and worrying and fretting just uses up our emotional storehouse way too fast, and that make a decision, even if you have to put a sunset clause on it, just to give some people a direction forward.
Yeah, I really love I really love that concept of schedule certainty.
Yeah.
Ben, how about you? I'd like to hear your perspective on all this.
Yeah. So I think it even ties into the question that you were asking before of when you're trying to work on yourself. What better ways we're pretty much being forced into this. Essentially, what Rosemary was talking about is being able to have more of the adaptability type of skill set. Like as Bill said, it's not so much change, it's just the rapid nature of the change that always keeps on kind of happening. And so I think one of the things to kind of look at is to, again, kind of apply to that, even if it is, again, structured change or the scheduled kind of change and things like that. I will say that Yes, there, honestly, and not trying to do the cheap out answer of every industry is going to be different, but it is true. Again, I think there are some companies, very large companies in the world that have announced, again, kind of models and what they're going to do till the end of the year. I don't know if I necessarily, again, believe in that, knowing how fast this has kind of changed. I think you can kind of shortchange yourself. I think like what Bill's talking about is the example of having little things that you can grasp onto and start to obviously, again, adapt. And it depends on your kind of company and your employees and your customers and your colleagues that you're kind of dealing with, as well as understanding their emotional state. But I think that something like a little bit more bite-sized chunk is definitely going to be way better than some of these things that I've seen out there where we're already making credos, are already making predictions for something that, let's be honest, the government, again, trends, it doesn't matter. Someone makes a prediction and then it gets, again, moved because we can't control it. So I think that would be one thing, just to kind of go off of Bill's point and kind of expand upon that, would be, again, something I'd highly recommend.
Sure. All right. Okay. I think we have time for one more question here, and it says, okay, I think I'll get this okay here. What opportunity do you think can be realized by reaching out to the dispossessed and the underserved with the hope that someday they can become a customer or an audience with a relationship? So I think they're kind of looking at wondering if you're going to be out just kind of providing some good value to someone that is underserved right now. How do you know they're going to become a customer or an audience within that relationship over time? So I guess with that, I'll put that out to Bill here on that one.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of altruism around that question, and I think depending on your purpose for being in business and your mission is going to play heavily into how you approach that. Not to sell myself short on the idealism scale, but my typical approach to the market is to not so much look at who's underserved, which is where most companies go. I actually often say, well, let's look who's overserved and figure out if we can come up with a solution that gives them not more than they need, because they don't want more than they need. This is how Southwest Airlines did so well. Let's give people only what they need, not more than what they need. And I think so. Our natural instinct is to look at who's underserved. If we're looking at people that have been disenfranchised and people that have been marginalized right now, that, unless you're already in that marketplace, that could very well be a whole new customer with a whole new value proposition, with a complete different new set of competitors, with a complete distribution approach and a completely different cost structure. And those differences is why most entrepreneurs fail, is all of that is new. And so I'd just be really careful about shifting my demographic customer segment unless I had a really compelling reason to do it.
That's good insight. All right, so Rosemary, I'd like to kind of hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I was looking at this question. Obviously, I had a few minutes here, and I think you've got to really be careful about your motivation. I think if you have a business that, providing something to the dispossessed or underserved is something that you want to do without expecting anything back, then it's a wonderful thing to do if you have the ability to, sort of do something as a give back perspective, where you're not expecting them to become customers. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And when you do what's the right thing to do, your business tends to win because people notice. The less you talk about what you're doing in that regard, the better. Because it comes back to you. People find out and it's like, wow, look at this organization. And I'm just going to pick a random example. They are feeding 100 people, 3 meals, 3 times a week, every month. And they're doing it quietly. They're doing it because they really care. that's the kind of company I want to work with. That's the kind of company I want to work for. That's the kind of company that I want to choose to buy my XYZ from. I think there's a lot of opportunity to stop the race for the top in terms of, let's be sure this year's profits are better than last year's profits. And that's where, you know, the game of business has kind of gone off the rails. And this, yes, my idealist is on the soapbox right now. But when you do the right thing for the right reasons, it tends to work. If you do not have the resources to do something like this, there are huge opportunities to approach organizations that perhaps have deeper pockets, where you can see that it would make sense for them to fund some kind of outreach, some kind of nonprofit side. And, you know, if that is your passion, absolutely. But if you're doing something like that in order to get a return at some future date, I would say don't go there, because 9 times out of 10, maybe 9.9 times out of 10, it will come back, and it will impact you negatively.
Thank you, everyone. Just some very, very good insights there. And with that, we're kind of coming near to the end of our time here. And I really, really enjoyed kind of the conversation we all had here today and the discussion. And I want to thank our panelists for sharing their insights and wisdom. I'd like to thank all of you for attending this Thrivecast episode. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And if you have any follow-up questions, or even questions that we were not able to address due to time limitations today, please send them to us at info@consciousbranding.com, and we will respond to you. We're also going to be sending you a link to this episode, along with some bonus materials to help keep the momentum moving forward with your business success. Feel free to share this with other business owners you know, or who you feel might be interested in it. And if you have any ideas or topics for future episodes you'd like us to cover, please let us know, and send that to us at info@consciousbranding.com. I look forward to seeing you all back here. And remember, you create your world. So believe in your vision, drive it with purpose, and take action. And until next time, be remarkable.